Hello and welcome to this very special edition of the Irish Wrestling Podcast. My name, as always, is Mark O'Brien. I'm joined today by a very special guest, a good friend of mine. He is the owner and custodian of Wrestle Inn. He's a podcast presenter. He's a writer. He is one of the foremost experts online in the Twitter space in regards to Puro Resu, as some people like to call it, or also known as Japanese professional wrestling. A lot of you may know him and recognize him. It's the one and only Mr. CiaranRH. Ciaran, how are you?
I'm gonna stop recording my own intros. I'm gonna play that anytime I'm
Yeah.
doing my own podcast and doing my own interviews. I'm just gonna play that now. That's got me covered. That was awesome. I'm good. I'm glad to be here, man. Thanks for reaching out to me and asking me to do this for you,
No problem at all. Listen, again, that's the name of the game. Just keep putting everybody else over until they start putting you over. So that's
man.
that's the way to do it.
Hey, amen.
Yeah, listen, I personally, to our early Irish wrestling fans, I met Ciaran last year. We were over at the World Quest show for New Japan over in Crystal Palace in a very funny out of the way venue for New Japan's 2 day event. I was 2 days in an FTR t-shirt, crying, making all sorts of noise, sitting beside Ciaran, this poor man, as I'm obscenely just emotional nonstop and having to chat nonstop shite. He was very patient and kind with me. So listen, he's been a good friend of mine ever since. Ciaran, listen, for a lot of Irish fans who may not be as familiar with your work as I am, can you tell us a bit more about your own kind of journey into the wrestling space and how you've become such a focal point of even a niche part of a niche genre that is wrestling?
Yeah, that is it. It's the most niches of niches, and I've got a niche within a niche, don't I? Um, yeah, I think it's just pot luck. The pandemic hit, I had more time, and it was, what can I kind of do with this? And I started to do some tweets, and I'd get some retweets from wrestlers, and I'd get a few followers, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Then I'd start diving into it a bit more, and now doing the on this day in wrestling history tweets, especially related to New Japan Pro Wrestling and Japanese pro wrestling history, is it's kind of my gimmick now. It's what people know me for. And it just kind of spiraled through there. Like I always wanted to write, so I started writing for different websites, and then things happened and I created my own platform instead, of course, Wrestle Inn, INN. And yeah, like now, do podcasts and do interviews, and I've got a good following and lots of engagement. And I just got very lucky, I think. It's a lot of work, admittedly,
Mm.
obviously, like, doing all these tweets and stuff and scheduling these tweets and making these gifs and stuff. But luckily I've got a day job that affords me a bit of spare time to do it. Obviously
Mm.
I shouldn't be doing it, but I'm lucky in that aspect, and I think I just got lucky in that I've garnered this little following and a bit of attention from some of the wrestlers who I can now slide into their DMs on occasion when I want.
That's a bit creepy, but anyway. But listen, you kind of echo the sentiments of a lot of us. I think, particularly over COVID, a lot of us would have started to really dive into our own wrestling fandom, particularly like before wrestling during that kind of strange part of time. A lot of us would have leaned more into our wrestling as an escape, and off
Yeah,
the back of that, our own wrestling fandom may have grown a lot more. Like mine in particular, my own, I'm far more of a wrestling nerd and whatnot than I was prior to COVID, probably to my own detriment, to my own mental health detriment, probably as well. But anyway, that's another kettle of fish and different story altogether. In terms of your own niche, I suppose, into the wild world of Japanese wrestling, at what age, when you're kind of growing up, did you start to, I suppose, engage, be it through All Japan, Noah, New Japan? At what point did you decide this is what I like? This is the kind of stories that I follow?
my first exposure to Japanese wrestling, like obviously, like everyone watched WWE forever. Kind of. I've got an older brother, so I like grew up watching it. I fell out of the womb and was already a wrestling fan. If I didn't have a choice, if I didn't want to watch it, my brother was watching it. But then in 2014, I discovered this crazy thing called independent pro wrestling, and it was like, whoa, there's wrestling outside of WWE. What do you mean? Like these guys, just the WWE isn't the only choice in town. And then it was Rev Pro. I went to my first ever Rev Pro show. It had the Young Bucks on it. It had Will Ospreay teaming up, Swords of Essex taking on Inner City Machine Guns. So I got to see Will Ospreay and Ricochet opposite each other at my first ever independent pro wrestling show. And obviously that's fucking blows your mind
Mm.
when all you're used to is 20 years of WWE. And then the second show I went to had Shinsuke Nakamura on it, and that was the moment. That was He walked out, in the leather with the long legs kicking, the awesome music, and I was like, who the fuck is this man? Like,
Yeah.
he is the coolest motherfucker I've seen. Google New Japan. I'm like, what is this? And I dive in head first. Um, and later that year in 2015, I'd always wanted to go to Japan, and I was like, what's this G1 Climax tournament? They're doing loads of shows in Japan. I'll go to Japan around the G1. And I was still in my night. I was still in my infancy as a New Japan fan, but I went to the final 3 nights of G1 Climax
Wow.
25, And obviously, like, that was it, off to the races, and I've loved it ever since.
Yeah, I think I said it to you last year when I saw you'd been over to Wrestle Kingdom. I was like, wow, that is something I really want to do, even just from a
Uh,
culturally, just a different world over there. I got a lot of friends who went to the Rugby World Cup back in 2019, was
yeah.
over in Japan, and I really wished at the time I'd gone, just seeing the kind of different way people live and the kind of different pace of life over there. I'd love to just experience for a holiday and whatnot. How many trips have you gone to Japan yourself at this stage?
Twice with my fiance, twice with a friend, and once my own. Five now.
Jesus,
Five since 2015, and obviously you've got COVID in there.
Jeez,
So.
that's unbelievable. Jeez, I'm incredibly jealous of that. I suppose your most recent trip was over to Japan was for Wrestle Kingdom, and as somebody who's part of the Wrestle Inn Discord, it was kind of funny to kind of follow along with your tweets and stuff around at the time, and you're kind of pumping it like, oh look, flights, oh poor me, I'm considering going to Wrestle Kingdom. Should I go? Should I not? And then the next thing you see on Twitter is Will Ospreay goading you into traveling to Japan on 24 hours notice. Give us Irish fans who may not follow you as much. What's that? What was that back and forth like at the time, and how much
Literally,
pressure do you feel?
but for months I've been saying I really want to go, but we've got a wedding booked. We had just come back off a big 2 week trip to America. Like, we'd done a few different states and stuff, which is when I proposed to my fiance, and it was like, hey, that cost a fortune. I've also just bought an engagement ring. Now booking a wedding. I owe a lot of money on my credit card. I can't do Wrestle Kingdom. And then Omega Ospreay, like, fuck's sake, why out of all the matches, Omega Ospreay. And then I had a look at flights, and they were just extortionate. It was like £1,500. I was like, oh, that's outrageous. And then I had a look, and it was, if I went for like a day or two extra earlier, it dropped by half the price. It was like £700-800.
Yeah.
I was like, that's doable. Like, that's not going to destroy my, bankrupt me on the credit card. And I put out a tweet, and it was like, oh, flights aren't that bad. I'm really tempted. Someone tell me otherwise. Like, a really cringe tweet in hindsight.
Yeah, yeah.
And then out pops Will Ospreay, and he's like, do it, you pussy. Fucking, like, he goaded me, and I'm like, well, Will was fucking telling me to do it. And
Yeah.
I said, like, sponsor me, as in, like, pay for me, and I'll do it. And he said, I'll pay for you. I'll get your tickets for the show. And I was like, I'm getting the opportunity to go to Wrestle Kingdom with a ticket from the man who's going to no doubt put on one of the matches of the year against Kenny Omega. I can't not go. So, like you said, I booked it on, I think, Thursday evening at like 6 p.m. And I flew on Friday morning at 8 a.m. I literally had barely 12 hours notice to do this 10-day trip to Japan and book all these wrestling tickets because, I wanted to go Noah, I wanted to go TJPW, I wanted to go to Stardom, I wanted to go Choco Pro, the New Japan Wrestle Kingdom, New Year's Dash, other stuff I'm probably forgetting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change it. I'm so glad I did it. Thank you to Will for being the cheeky little prick he is and goading me into it.
But like, look at if you think back to your story like less than 10 years ago, you were like, oh, what is
Oh,
independent pro wrestling? And the next thing you know, you've got like the best wrestler, arguably of all time, subjectively, some people could argue that, is now getting you tickets for a show over in Japan. Like, how just as a journey, that's pretty cool in itself. For somebody who's just chatting shit online like the rest of us, like, do you know what I mean? On paper, that's unbelievable, man. Like that's literally living the dream. And also, so you're talking about Omega there as well. Like obviously, you were there for Will Ospreay and Mega match. You were there for him and Okada teaming up for the second day, but you also
yes.
met Omega, and then I saw that he gave a lovely touch online to you. Like you have this fantastic series that a lot of wrestlers appreciate. This On This Day series that I'm sure there's a huge amount of work for, but Omega actually gave you a shout out and gave you credit for the amount of work that you do, and a lot of wrestlers appreciate that piece of work you do. For Irish fans who've no doubt seen this, I guarantee they've seen this now, but may not be put two and together as you. Can you give a bit of an outline in terms of what the On This Day series is and the amount of work that goes into it on your end?
Yeah, it's literally just so I will check, there's a multitude of different websites that are awesome. What wrestling events happened on this day throughout history. So it'll say, in 2012, Raw took place, 2013, New Japan took place, 2001, whatever. And I'll dive into the cards and I'll see if there's anything of importance, because lots of the time it's just bollocks. And it's like, oh, this big match happened on this day, or, Kenny Omega versus Okada happened on this day, or, so then what I was doing originally, obviously, that it's difficult now with New Japan, but I would watch the match and I would GIF the match. So create a GIF of all the big moments. So, I'm having to watch the match. I'm having to fine tune the program at the right time and stop at the right time. And then once I do that, it's a matter of Twitter has a size limit. You're only allowed to upload a GIF that's 15 megabytes or less. So then it's like, okay, my GIF is too big. So I've got to delete some of those moments I've recorded. And then it's still too big and I've got to compress it. And I've got to put that into a tweet that makes make sure the date's correct, I'm tagging the right people, and then I schedule that tweet in advance. So that's all for one match. Obviously, once I've done it once, I can use that tweet again the next year. keep the gift. I wasn't at first. I was really fucking stupid, man. I had to redo so many of them. Um, but yeah, but now because like there's also I do it with AEW, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
with I'm trying to do more videos rather than gifs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like finding an AEW tweet I can link to, or a YouTube clip I can download and cut and edit. Yeah, it is a lot of effort. I try and
Mm-hmm.
schedule. I was doing 2 months in advance, but my
Okay.
work schedule has changed, so now it's probably about a month in advance, just because life happens and I might not
Yeah.
have a chance to do it one. So and I want to keep content is king,
Yeah.
and there's an expectancy now. That people
Yeah.
are to see something happens, and they know that they can go to my tweet to see what it was.
But I suppose like expectancy, and then there's obviously pressures of privilege that like you've kind of built up
Yeah,
a fan base now that are really looking forward to your content as well, which obviously that's a brilliant place to be in. But regardless of how much of an undertaking that is, like 1 month in advance piece of work, that's a huge piece of work to kind of go out of your weekend or whatever day you do it on. I suppose we're just touching on Ospreay and Omega, and I'd be kind of remiss of me not to mention this past weekend with Forbidden Door. As somebody who's got his own kind of perspective on American wrestling, independent wrestling, and Japanese wrestling, overall, like it was kind of. I know some people are using a bit of hyperbole, in my opinion, calling it the best wrestling show of all time. I thought it was brilliant, really, really, really good. But even the Osprey Omega match, I thought there were certain things that could have took from it, in my opinion, and not at the fault of the wrestlers, more so around the Don Callis and
yeah.
security guard type of stuff. That just took away from it slightly for myself. What were your overall thoughts on the show, and I suppose that match in particular?
I loved it. I think Shibata's my all-time favorite
Yeah,
wrestler. So
yeah,
to see him wrestling, I'm never going to get bored of seeing that man back in
yeah.
the ring. That's a miracle. I think Osprey Omega had so much hype to live up to, and I think it really did. I think they went a really different route to what they did in Forbidden Door at Wrestle Kingdom, because
Mm,
Will Ospreay said how it was 80% Kenny Omega at Wrestle Kingdom.
mm,
He Will Ospreay really didn't have much, whereas this one was more back and forth, and this one was just kind of balls to the wall. Let's fucking go for it. I agree on the Don Callis stuff.
yeah,
Like, I think it kind of did take away. Thankfully, it didn't play into the ending. Like
mm,
the screw drive to the head, the
yeah,
Stormbreaker,
yeah,
and the foot on the rope. I lost my mind in that kick out.
yeah.
That was superb. I was like,
Mm,
oh, the match is done. Will's got the title back, thank God. And then Osprey got Omega his foot on the rope. I was like, ah, they got me hook, line, and
yeah,
sinker.
yeah.
I don't know whether I prefer it to Wrestle Kingdom.
Mm,
Uh, I think as well, just because obviously I watched Wrestle Kingdom, I was there, saw the match, and I rewatched it. So
yeah.
I haven't. It's weird to try appreciate something you've seen in
Mm,
person, but I loved it. I can't fault it. The Tiger Driver was fucking wild. Literally just crunching Omega's head.
yeah,
Um, yeah, no, I loved it. I think Danielson. I got a bit of stick on Twitter. I said yikes about Danielson and Carter. Um, I just think it didn't live up to the hype. I
mm,
think that's your main event. You've done the whole thing of who's going to be the best wrestler in the world is the thing. Like,
yeah,
let's settle this. And obviously Danielson got injured, like, and what he'd done on an injury, unbelievable. The fact that he was
yeah.
still able to put on that good of a match with that broken arm for 10 minutes. I just feel like up to that point, it still wasn't blow away. I feel like good was never going to be good enough. Great wasn't going to be good enough. It had to be just otherworldly, and I don't think it reached that height. I loved it. I rewatched the ending and I was like, okay, this is better than I thought at first, but you know, I'm not fully on board.
Yeah, I was kind of watching that. I was wondering how much did they give away in terms of letting other matches do certain things. Like Danielson's known for being quite giving and generous and prioritizing other people above himself. And I was also conscious that like Okada's matches generally tend to kind of build to a crescendo of kind of frenetic pace the last 10, 15 minutes.
Yes.
And obviously that could kind of play into it and whatever what the planned ending was. I liked it. I actually really enjoyed it. And I liked the difference in the slow, methodical storytelling and kind of two practitioners of their craft not trying to
Yeah.
murder each other and just slowly it was just such a stark contrast to what you'd seen before. But again, if if
Yes.
if it was only one of them on the card, I think you'd have enjoyed that bit more. But also the Danielson had that moment obviously with his entrance, the final countdown, that a lot of fans kind of peaked at that part. So like
Yes.
people were already invested, so they didn't necessarily have to do everything. And I think there's naturally going to lend to a rematch, be it at Wrestle Kingdom down the road or wherever it is. I think Danielson will likely face Zack Sabre Jr. at All In my opinion.
As well, I think as well. Obviously, I've got a bias because I prefer Japanese wrestling much to the
Mm,
American wrestling as well. But I think that I didn't expect the match to finish when it did,
yeah,
because the crowd didn't expect it to finish.
yeah,
They weren't invested in that submission at the end.
mm,
I think if you do that submission in front of a Japanese audience, they're losing their fucking mind
Yeah.
because they bite on on everything. And when there's a submission that's potentially match ending, they lose their minds.
Yeah.
So I think that scenario in front of a Japanese audience is just amplified a million times more.
I love seeing finishes that are different. I love seeing something that kind of catches you out, like particularly like when you compare it with like MMA, where somebody can get knocked out in the first few minutes. There's just something that makes you think, so it's not following a typical kind of flow structure. I suppose just kind of touching on the big massive summer ahead. We've mentioned like All In. We've touched on your own fandom of Rev Pro. Rev Pro have some massive shows coming up this summer in particular.
Yes.
Epic Encounter a few weeks away. You've got their show at the Cop Box end of the summer. I know, like obviously you're a massive fan of the Great O'Khan, as am I. Against the one and only Michael Oku for the Rev Pro Championship. What are your expectations for these Rev Pro shows? Be it the Copper Box, I've no doubt you're probably front row seats backstage with Andy Quills and the lads after the show.
No, not quite. I'm really excited for Epic Encounter. Obviously, they've just announced Tom Lawler as a replacement for Gabe Kidd. I absolutely love Gabe Kidd. He's one of the nicest dudes in the world. But I'm so excited to Tom Lawler coming over to the UK. Pumped for that. Hopefully, I can see Michael Oku getting the win here. I think it's his time. You know, Great O'Khan perhaps wasn't meant to win and everything. You know, they had the RKJ injury and everything like that. And then Copper Box is just going to be something special, isn't it? I'm not front row by any means, but I kind of saved that for the New Japan shows. I think got to budget myself. But yeah, I mean the fact that Rev Pro are running a venue of that capacity, that size, and the first thing they announced is Shingo versus Will Ospreay, which is one of the best rivalries in history in terms of in ring at least. They've obviously got special stuff planned, like Kenta is being teased for the Progress show that same day.
Yeah,
there's no way Kenta only does Progress and doesn't know Rev Pro, right? But no, I'm so excited. Like I just realized like Rev Pro is like a little under 2 weeks away, and I was like, oh god, that's something to get excited about. It's almost here. You know, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Jordan Breaks, Leon Slater versus Will Ospreay. It's looking like a stacked show. I love Rev Pro so much.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it as well. Just kind of following up on demand. I saw something yesterday. Michael Oku was the 6-year anniversary in wrestling yesterday. Like he made his debut for Progress 6 years ago yesterday.
Yeah.
Like how disgustingly annoying is that? Like he's 6 years in the business and he's already like perceived to be one of the best on the absolute planet. But yeah, listen, I suppose the further down the line, we've obviously got the All In weekend. And there's obviously a big expectation and hope for a British tie-in with this card. Obviously, the likes of Jamie Hayter and Pac, I assume, will have a feature position on the card. But also, there's an expectation around, be it Will Ospreay, Zack Sabre Jr., or a few other talents on the side of the world. What are your own hopes and expectations for hopefully a sellout card?
I think what we all wanted, certainly a lot of people wanted, was Will Ospreay Kenny Omega round 3. This fantasy of they had it in Japan, and they could both call Japan their home. You have it in Canada, which is Kenny Omega's literal home, and you have it in London. You know, Will Ospreay's an Essex boy, and Will Ospreay's home. And how rare of a chance to have this big of a match series happen in 3 different continents and it be in each person's home. Like that's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah,
I don't know that we'll get it. I did to be a little bit of a stuck up person here. I spoke to Will after the Omega match, and I said round 3 at Wembley, and he was like, "I hope we never do it again." I think they were both so banged up from that match. They were both fine. He said like there's nothing serious at all, but I think they were both like they're gonna kill each other. You know what I mean? But yeah, I hope Will Ospreay's on that show. He deserves to be. I don't think anyone has done more for British wrestling than him in the past. You could say 20 years.
Yeah.
And Zack Sabre Jr. certainly fits that bill as well. But at the end of the day, it is an AEW show.
Yeah.
I can't. It's awful of me to say. AEW fans want all their guys in the G1, and I'm like, no, it's a New Japan show. If you want to watch New Japan guys, watch New Japan. I shouldn't now be like, I'm going to an AEW show. Stick all my New Japan guys in there, please. But I think just throwing a battle royal or something, right? You've got to get people on this card. You've got to let people perform in Wembley Stadium. You've got to have, all these guys that busted their ass during the pandemic in AEW. I'm talking about all these guys, like whether it be the Guns, although they've got good stuff popping up, Bullet Club Gold. All these guys that busted their asses and haven't perhaps had the time of day, they deserve to be walking down what's probably going to be a huge ramp in Wembley Stadium. But that's going to be special, man. This is the first time in my lifetime that I can go to something like this.
Yeah, I'm going to it myself, and like I couldn't be more excited. I was lucky enough to go to WrestleMania last year without that level of expectation. I didn't have a huge excitement. It was more of a holiday and a once in a lifetime trip. But for this All In, I'm beyond excited. I think my personal expectations around Will Ospreay, I reckon he's going to be in a trios match with Aussie Open against the House of Black. I reckon that's kind of their natural lane. I think probably, as you said, Kenny and Will probably need more than 2 months to recover from that match anyway. And then I'm hoping if Danielson's recovered in time, he'll be able to face Zack Sabre Jr. If not, you could see Zack Sabre Jr. maybe do something with Pac or something to that effect.
Yeah, I mean Danielson, when he left
Mm.
WWE and he was doing all the interviews, he very poignantly and straight up said he wants to wrestle Zack Sabre Jr., but he wants to do it in England.
Yeah,
Like this, Danielson wants to do it in England, not Zach Danielson.
yeah,
So is there a better opportunity than this?
yeah.
Hopefully he's recovered in time, of course. But yeah, I mean, it is the case though. Obviously, you can't fault Tony Khan for being like, this is an AEW show. Let's have my boys on it.
Yeah, like
I think I Will Ospreay I can understand because he has done a lot
yeah,
for AEW proxy. Like, he was the star of Forbidden Door last year, the star of Forbidden Door this year. He's shown up enough times. He talks
yeah,
about AEW. He promotes AEW. He's obviously got a good relationship with Tony Khan.
yeah.
So you'd imagine Will Ospreay at the very least. But I think Zack Sabre. I personally want to see Zack Sabre Jr. But I could totally understand if he wasn't.
Yeah. No, listen, I think you're kind of touched on there. Dennison has been very effusive in his kind of praise for the likes of Brian Dixon and the time he spent over here in the UK, doing camps and things like that as well. And the last time he faced
Yeah.
Zack Sabre Jr. was 2008, and Jack was just an infant in his eyes back then. So he's thoroughly impressed by him back then. But listen, that's our shared dream for that card anyway. Listen, Ciaran, you've been incredibly generous with your time. What can wrestling fans, I suppose, who follow yourself or Wrestle Inn, what can they expect for you guys over the coming months? Do you have any big projects in the horizon? Any live shows perhaps around these big events, or what's on the horizon for you guys?
Well, on my Twitter, it's always just going to be loads of gifs, loads of clips, like doing everything I can to get them sweet likes and retweets and follows. I'll admit it, I'm a sucker for it. Over on Wrestle Inn, we're really trying to do more content. We're doing live shows. We've got the technology. We're paying for the StreamYard subscription. It ain't cheap. But yeah, we're doing more live shows. We're doing more, preview shows, more fallouts, because we want to be engaging more. We're trying to get so many interviews on the go. We just had one drop. I got to ask questions to Kaito Kiyomiya, of course.
Yeah,
Booted Okada in the face. I'm absolutely over the moon with that interview. I've just interviewed CiaranRH of New Japan, which will be dropping now-ish, this week, certainly. We've got more in the backlog. Where it's a bit of a, you get the ball rolling, the promotion, you go through the promotions in Japan, of course. They say, yes, you can interview our wrestler. Please send your questions across. You send the questions across. You never hear that. So we've got one in the works with a Stardom wrestler. We've got one in the works with a Dragon Gate wrestler. One in the works with a Choco Pro wrestler. I love Choco Pro. Choco Pro. And I want to say there's more. And I've got the ear of one AEW guy who has agreed to interview me, but I have to go through the marketing team and their PR team guys aren't always the nicest. Not to little old me and Wrestle Inn. But yeah, no, we're trying to do more exclusive stuff to make, give you a bang for your buck, to kind of have our own little corner of the internet. We got podcasts, we got great columns, a bit of everything except from WWE, if I'm being honest.
And you're better off. Yeah, you're better off that avoid no straws. But anyway, sorry, listen, I'm really glad you touched on the Kaito Kiyomiya piece. I was really, really cool that you managed to get that. I was going to ask you how I was wondering how did he actually, because he's obviously in such a unique place now. He's doing the G1, but he's a Noah guy. His stuff with Okada has been unbelievable. Like it's one of the most refreshing things in the whole of wrestling recently. Just something completely off the wall and different. Just before we wrap up, I hope you can just touch on this very briefly. How did you manage to get that relationship going, working with so many different moving parts?
It's just through Noah, honestly. I found the contact details for their PR team. Start speaking to the person on Twitter as well. He's a really nice guy. When I went to the show on New Year's Day, Shinsuke Nakamura versus Great Muta in Nippon Budokan in Tokyo, he helped me get tickets. He was like, if you go here at this time, speak to these people and stuff like that. And I literally just took, like, I say this to people when they're like, how do you manage to interview this? Or surely you're not just DMing people. I'm like, that's literally it. You just have to take your shot. You'll be surprised at how generous lots of wrestlers are. I DM'd the PR person, the English PR person for Noah, and I said, what's the chances of being able to send some questions across with Kaito Kiyomiya? And he was like, I think I can make it work. And the questions, like, I send the questions, and sometimes you wait weeks, and you're like, they're not going to get back to me. The Kaito responses, we got in on like within 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
I was like, holy shit. I was like, I just got to ask Kaito Kiyomiya some questions. And for my money, his feud with Okada is the best feud of this year, especially if it continues. I was buzzing. But that's the best advice I say to people all the time, is you just got to take your shot. The worst thing is someone says no or they ignore you.
Yeah.
You got to make it personalized. You got to sell yourself. You can't just be copy and pasting generic stuff. But take your chances, man.
Yeah, listen, you miss all the shots you never take. I think it's really
100%.
cool. Yeah, that's absolutely amazing, man. Ciaran, listen, for yourself, for all your time, your help with me over the last year as well. Thank you very, very much for your time this evening. All
Always.
Irish wrestling fans, please go out of your way to follow Ciaran. Please go out of your way to follow Wrestle Inn, be it across Twitter, Instagram, every single platform. Check out their Patreon as well. It's more than worth your money as well. I can tell you that as somebody who's a subscriber. Ciaran, thank you very much once more again. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you very much. Have a good week.
You too, man. Glad. Anytime, always.
Nice one.